Friends. One day I was in a procession in Brooklyn. She was one of thousands on the sidewalk, and as I passed by, she says, "Glory be to God, you certainly look much better on television."
I'll take, for example, hope. A girl has a hope to be married. She may boast that she's been asked 20 or 30 times to get married, always by her father and mother. Incidentally, I have a cousin who proposed to the same girl 10 times. He's been turned down so often he looks like a bedspread.
Normally, priests are ordained about at the age of 24. So here I was studying at the University of Louvain in Belgium until I was 29 years of age. Those 6 years in the third grade sure set me back.
If you are enjoying this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much, and God love you.
This is going to be a very sad telecast. It's on the anatomy of melancholy.
On one occasion, I went into the barber shop in the afternoon of the lecture. The barber did not recognize me. He said, "Are you going to that lecture tonight by Bishop Sheen?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you have a ticket?" I said, "No, I don't." Well, he said, "All the tickets have been sold. You probably will have to stand." I said, "You know, it's a peculiar thing that every time I go to hear that man talk, I always have to stand." Another mother said that as she was coming home from Europe this summer, she was trying to smuggle in a bottle of perfume, and her little daughter knew it. The custom official was opening the bag and going through it, and the little girl said, "Mommy, he's getting warm, isn't he?"
One story came to us. This child was a bit impatient about being served his breakfast, and he was banging his spoon on his bowl, demanding service. The mother was occupied and unable to do it. Finally picked up the bowl, pulled it over his head and says, "Look, Mom, Bishop Sheen." We will probably get offers from a cereal company after that story. Oh yes, I must tell you a story about this. A father brought home his hat one night, and he said to his wife, "I picked up the wrong hat in a restaurant." And his son looked at it, saw J.M.J., and he says, "That's Bishop Sheen's hat."
I opened the church door this particular morning, and a limp figure fell in. A young woman. I said, "How did you happen to be here?" "Where am I, Father?" I said, "Oh, Father?" "Yes." She said, "I used to be a Catholic, but not anymore." I made a cup of coffee for her, for she was frozen from the night exposure. She said, "Thanks." I said, "No, come back this afternoon and thank me." She said, "I will on one condition, that you do not ask me to go to confession." She said, "I want you to promise me faithfully that you will not ask me to go to confession." I said, "I promise you faithfully that I will not ask you to go to confession." She came back that afternoon before matinee, and I said, "We have 2 paintings in this church that are very notable. Would you like to see them?" As I took her down the side aisle of the church, I pushed her into a confessional. I always keep my promises. 2 years later, I gave her her veil as a nun in the convent of Adoration, where she is to this very hour. So he borrowed enough money to come back on a plane. He didn't know which airline to take. He chose one. The one he chose had a couple of engines that conked out. Stewardess came through, gave them parachutes. He chose one. The one he chose didn't open. As he was flying down, he shouted out to the heavens, St. Francis, have pity on me." And from heaven there came the answer, "Which St. Francis?"
We were to say something. I was looking to see where the lights were. Do you mind turning this red light around here so I can see it? That's right. Thank you very much. I get so nervous when I can't see these lights.
Last week in the New York subway, a gentleman got up and gave a seat to the lady, and she fainted. But just as she was fainting, she said thanks, and then he fainted at hearing thanks.
He was out walking one day with his 2 boys, Cain and Abel, and they passed the wreck and the ruin of the once beautiful Garden of Paradise. Adam looked in rather wistfully, pulled the 2 boys to himself, and then said, "Boys, that's where your mother ate us out of house and home." Preparing her little girl for another arrival, said, "Which would you rather have, a little brother or a little sister?" And she said, "A litter of puppies." And another little boy was told by a neighbor, "Oh, I see that heaven sent you a little gift, a little baby brother." And yes, said heaven wanted it quiet up there. And not very long ago, I was examining a class in catechism, and I said to a little boy, "What is a niche in a church?" He said, "A niche in a church is the same as niche anywhere else, except you can't scratch it in church." Did you ever hear the story about the Irishman that came over to this country and hired out to a farmer, and the farmer called him at 4 o'clock in the morning? And the Irishman said, "What for?" Farmer said, "We're going to cut the oats." "Are they wild oats?" said the Irishman. "No," said the farmer, "they're not wild oats." He said, "Then why do you have to be snaking up in the dark all day?" A day almost passed before you got that one.
I will not be like the professor who traveled around the country with Chauffeur. One day the chauffeur said to him, "You know, I think that I have heard that lecture of yours 1,000 times, and I could give it just as well as you do." The professor said, "All right, you give the lecture tonight. I will dress up in your chauffeur's uniform and sit in the audience." The chauffeur gave a perfect lecture, but at the end, a hand went up. "There's a question that I should like to ask you." He said, "That's the most stupid question that I ever heard in my life. And to show you how stupid it is, I'm going to ask my chauffeur to answer it."
Who said that she took her little 3-year-old daughter Mary to church for the first time. Finally, she came to a place where there were a number of candles before an altar, and she started blowing them out, and then she started to sing, "Happy birthday to you." You heard the story, didn't you, of the two psychoanalysts who passed one another in the street? One said to the other, "Good morning," and the other said, "I wonder what he meant by that." Chip. You laugh at me before I get started. I know it's that bad, but I can't help it. A mother who told me that her son, aged about 4, was brought to Mass every Sunday, and after the priest left the altar, went into the sacristy, he would whisper to his mother, "Mommy, Mass isn't over." 4 Sundays he said that. The 5th Sunday he could not stand it any longer. He knew how it should end. Everything should end. He stood up on the pew, turned to the congregation, says, "Bye now, God love you." Bye now, and God love you.